During Putin's meeting in Geneva, President Biden gave Putin its 16 critical infrastructure entities that are off limits to cyber attacks, basically giving Russia the green light to attack other infrastructures not on that list. So we talked a lot about that last week, and joining us now is former Principal Deputy to Acting DNI Rick Grinnell and former Deputy Assistant to President Trump for Counterterrorism Kash Patel. Kash, great to see you today.
Hey, it's great to be with you and with Rick. A real pleasure.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Kash, so do you think that Biden telling Putin not to attack these 16 critical infrastructure, it's basically given Biden the list of our most vulnerable infrastructures?
And look, you're absolutely right. It's like giving a roadmap to America's arch rival of, hey, if you weren't attacking these areas before, please attack them now. And also by handing them over to Biden, you've basically given to China, Iran, Cuba, the DPRK, and the rest of the world. And as Rick knows really well, while the list itself may not be classified, our 16 critical infrastructure nodes are compiled from classified sensitive information. And we use that throughout the interagency to determine when there's a crisis that America faces on the national security front, what infrastructure nodes we need to protect. And Rick would never let a list like that out when he was the director of national intelligence, because he's far superior in national security intellect than Joe Biden was in the meeting with President Putin.
Kash, man, it's so good to see you. Look, I know you and I have talked about this before, but the private sectors, which you know well, are they really prepared for these attacks?
Some of them are, and some of them are not. And I think one of the things you and I worked on was augmenting the private sector relationship with the government's intelligence community. And President Trump and you, I think, saw it correctly that a private public sector engagement to protect America is the best way forward. A great example is of what we're doing in space in the private and public sector, and also what we're doing suboceanic in the private and public sectors. And so I think that combination has seemed to eluded the Biden administration because they were too busy giving away America's secrets to Vladimir Putin.
Yeah. Kash, when Jen Psaki was asked about who the U.S. would target if there was another Russian cyber attack, she had an interesting answer. Take a listen.
Why didn't he give Putin a list of targets inside of Russia that the United States would target if another cyber attack does take place in the United States?
Because we don't preview our punches.
What are your thoughts on that, Kash? Do you think, I get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think Joe Biden probably was only able to put so many names and numbers on one cheat sheet that he walked into President Putin's meeting with. So that's probably their reason for not giving over what we would attack. And also probably realistically because they don't know what to attack in Russia because they're too busy rooting out fake white supremacy in the Department of Defense and saying falsely that domestic terrorism is the #1 national security threat in America when the facts show that domestic terrorism is at its lowest point in 3 decades.
Kash, I'd love your thoughts on what the role of government is here. I mean, don't we want private sector companies investing their own money to protect their assets rather than just complaining about, the government not doing enough?
And Rick, that's one of the biggest points that everyone glosses over. The private sector companies are making billions and billions of dollars off government contracts that they continue to re-up because they are the only ones capable of doing certain work, especially in space and underwater and through our fiber optic cables networks. And so you're correct, the private companies should be the ones reinvesting in the government and saying, hey, we found this technology to do this work better. We're not going to charge you for it since we already charged you $100 billion for it. We'll give it to you for free. But they should be coming back to us. And that's incumbent upon the current administration to reach out and make sure that those strings are attached to the purse that they are doling out in the Biden administration.
Yeah, Kash, if there's another cyber attack on the U.S. infrastructure and Russia was behind it, do you think it would hurt the relationship between Russia and the U.S.? Or do we don't really even have like a great relationship anyways, but do you think it would make it worse?
I mean, I think after the summit, Vladimir Putin probably threw a party at the Moscow hotel that Trump supposedly had his, Russiagate hoax in. But I don't think that the relationship between the U.S. and America is one that could get any worse at this point. And I think Russia knows that. We've been fully taken advantage of. The summit was just a highlight reel sham for the mainstream media in terms of the U.S. perspective. And instead of actually doing something like demanding back our hostages that are wrongfully detained in Russia, Trevor Reed and Paul Whelan, 2 former Marines who were wrongfully imprisoned there, Joe Biden took in a list of 16 infrastructure nodes. What he should have handed President Putin was a card of these 2 brave Americans and say, return our hostages immediately before we have any further negotiations.
Kash, you're so smart, but you still are not married. I just wish that we could find you a woman. It's really
Rick, that's
emphasizing the fact that being single here is not helpful. Anyway, thanks for joining us.
Who needs a dating app when you can be on Newsmax? All right, thank you so much,
Thanks,
Kash. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.